Welcome to the Bridge of Truth. I am extremely excited and actually very, very fortunate to be able to be at the Meta Center in New York today to talk to my special guest, JoAnn Parks. We had the opportunity to meet last year. JoAnn is the keeper of Max, the famous crystal skull, one of the most well-known and scientifically studied. And we're going to have an opportunity to talk with her today about him. And why don't we start with that, JoAnn?
Let's
Tell
do
us
that.
a little bit about.
There's so much to talk about Max. I mean, Max is like a fingerprint, and there's nothing on him that's alike. But Max has been researched by the British Museum and Russian scientists to geologists and gemologists and scientists all over the world, and they can't understand how he's not falling apart. Yeah. And he came into my life under very sad circumstances. This was not really even part of my life. I never had a crystal in my hand, had no need for a crystal skull, had no need for crystals, raised mainstream religion. But I always had an open mind and a willingness to learn. And always felt if you did not have an open mind and a willingness to learn, you lose a vision. So we had a daughter, age 12, and she came down with bone cancer. She was given 3 months to live with no hope for survival. So our doctor, our family doctor, knew a Tibetan healer, a Tibetan monk. And, Tibetan monks, I mean, he just said he was a Lama. And finally he decided he'd call him a doctor because all Lamas just had 4 legs, and he knew we wasn't going to understand that.
Where were you living?
I was born and raised in Houston, Texas,
okay.
So I was living there in Houston, and he was too. So we met we met the Lama through our family medical doctor in 1973, and under those unusual circumstances. And he saw my daughter, and he said, well, you already gave her chemotherapy, and we'll do our best. So I just say through the skull's work, the Lama's work, the Creator's work, they did extend her life for 3 more years. And that's how I ended up there with them, watching them do their healing work, not even really knowing why for the next 4.5 years. So all of that strange stuff came in what they call synchronicities. And I didn't even know what a synchronicity was. Synchronicity this, synchronicity that. Pieces of puzzle kept coming together. I didn't want the skull. I didn't need to work with Lamas. And then I thought, well, perhaps synchronicity is God's secret way of arranging things. So I kept an open mind. So they did extend her life. I ended up there with 4.5 years. And my husband was in the custom furniture family business. And that's how we met him. And one day, we didn't even know who he was. And one day, I was upstairs, and he brought this little book home, and there's those synchronicities again. And he said, I know who a strange little fellow is. I said, yeah, who? Because our family doctor didn't really get into it and explain. And he said, yeah, he's this famous healer. And I said, well, then I want to meet him. And that's when I did so. And found out that he was found and backed by our 14th Apollo astronaut, Edgar Mitchell, who was the 6th man to walk on the moon, the late Doris Duke of Duke University, the late actor Yul Brynner, Harry Salzman, famous for the James Bond productions, C.V. Wood Jr., who was president of the American Stock Exchange and Pharmacular Oil Company, and a man named Tom Slicks Jr., who was the son of Tom Slicks Sr., and they had done many books on him. He was a Texas billionaire, and he went to the Himalayas looking for the legendary Bigfoot against the government's wishes and mysteriously died in a plane crash. So, including Dr. Michael DeBakey, the famed heart transplant surgeon. They all knew about holistic medicine and alternative medicine, but way, way too early for the time. This was back in the 70s.
And all these people you're mentioning, they were being treated by this person?
They knew him and wasn't being treated by him, but they knew him and backed him in his foundation. But now he did work on Edgar Mitchell's wife, the then wife of kidney failure, and the auspicious eyes of NASA scientists, and cured her of that and other things. But I saw many miracles go on in that foundation, not even really knowing why. I just thought I was hanging around with a bunch of old men. They call themselves monks. That's how naive I was.
Amazing.
But I'd go home and my husband said, "What goes on there?" I said, "Well, crazy monks talk to a rock." But, you know, we
With
talked
a face
to a rock.
on it.
Well, yeah, a face on it. And I said, they go in, people come and go. He said, they're getting healed. They talk his funny language and all this and that. But it was very interesting. And but my Lama happened to turn out to be an undercover agent as well.
Oh, right.
Yes, it gets better. It could be a movie. It gets better. He entered the military at age 18. He went under special assignments, forces, and CIA for a while. Then he went in to be a DEA agent as drug enforcement. So we called him Lama Norbu, Norbu. And he went into jails and prisons and universities for drugs. But then they wanted him to do some serious things. And he agreed. And he was placed into prison where he had break up some serious drug rings. And while he was in there, he smuggled out information that ruined the political career of a lieutenant governor for corruption within the system. But he was found out. In fact, even the prison chaplain helped him smuggle out all this information. And he was found out. The contract was placed on his life, and he was placed in the Federal Witness Protection Program and moved around under many, many aliases and names. And to this day, they call him all kind of names, and they haven't got his name right
Now,
yet.
how did he end up with Max then?
Well, he wanted to be a healer, and they asked him. He went into what they went into what they called the Red Hat Kappa, to study to be a healer. And he got a letter from a woman named Madame Alexander David Neal, and she was well known for her studies in Tibet and Nepal. And she was the first European woman who could move freely in and out of Tibet and Nepal for 14 years, even dressed as a man, so they think she could have been a double agent as well.
Wow.
And she was so impressed with him that she gave Norbu a letter of introduction to what we call the Red Hat Kampa. So he entered, he went through Kathmandu and stayed in India, and he was waiting for his teacher, Lama, to take him to his teacher. So he said, you waited there for so long, they thought he'd starved to death, and he had handed the letter to the Lama, and then the Lama said, "Where you been so long?" He said, "Well, I was waiting for you. Why didn't you come get me?" He said, "Well, that's your first lesson." He said, "You come get me, I don't come get you." And that's when he went into Kathmandu, and he studied in a little Asian nation called Sikkim that just borders Tibet. And that's where you spend 9 months in total darkness, naked, ice cold. You learn and sit and meditate properly, progress to the next level, or you just go mad or die. He had to cut arteries, allowing them to bleed in the bone, would mentally stop the bleeding or die. And he had to just stay in total darkness and meditate. And if the food came out a little hole, they fed him through a wall. If that didn't come out every 2 days, they knew he was alive. And if it came out, they just rolled the rock back and buried you. But it kept coming out, so after 9 months, they rolled the rock back. They had to cover his eyes in bandages, and they took him out, but they placed him in ice-cold blankets and put him in ice-cold rivers. And he had to learn and regulate his body temperature.
Is that common training for the
Yes,
Lamas?
for a red hat. Yes, they go through a lot of rigorous training. And he passed the test, and we're given what they give in the title of a Gilong. That's a teacher priest. And so he still wanted to do his healing modalities, and he went to the Philippines to see their ways of healing. And then they asked him for one more drug assignment, and he said, "Well, I'll go if you let me take interpreters with me," because he wanted to go over there for the medicines. He wanted to meet the medicine men because he knew a lot of the healings was in the medicines. And they said, okay. So we spent about 9 months there with them. And when he came back, he said, God didn't know to ask. He just said that the skull was given to him by the medicine men. And then he opened a healing foundation, and they placed the skull on their altar, and they in turn used it as their healing and spiritual tool. And they would chant and talk Tibetan to it, claim they communicated with it. And they would tap that energy, which I knew nothing about, which we'd get into how he's put together. And they would tap it into meridian and acupuncture points, which they had to teach me what it was, to assist in their healings. So people come, people go, and there was other lamas, many lamas there. And one was Choji Lama, and Choji Lama was straight out of Tibet. And he was a High Lama of Tibet. His name was known all over Tibet, like the Dalai Lama. And there's a man named Dundles Throng, and Throng came from high nobility of Tibet. And he walked in a backstreet restaurant right here in New York City and saw this High Lama back there cooking and washing dishes. Because he couldn't speak the language, he wanted to know, he had to do something to make a living. And he noticed that this was a very High Lama. And he started speaking Tibetan to him. And his father, Dundle's father, was the commander general of the Tibetan army and used to help the 13th Dalai Lama move around freely and safely. So he saw this High Lama back there washing dishes and started talking Tibetan to him. And they threw their arms around each other, and he brought him to the foundation.
Wow.
And then he escaped with ancient Tibetan books and was teaching the medicines and acupunctures and stuff out of there, but he was always coming to get me. And I didn't speak, I didn't speak any Tibetan, he didn't speak English, but I just figured if he was grinning and bowing and backing away, I didn't have any fear of this man. So they was always bringing me in the healing room, and he had these little pot plants down there, growing his plants, his medicines, and I didn't know what he was doing, but he wanted to show them to me, and I just grinned and shake my head, that's great, and I'd buy, and he'd fix me Tibetan hamburgers, and they were some hot, spicy meatballs, and I said, I can't have to do that. And all kind of things. I didn't know what an acupuncture needle was, and I was there one day, and he was walking behind me with the acupuncture needles, and he had a grin on his face. And then he kept doing like this to me, and I kept doing like this to him. And so he said, I kept walking around, and I looked again, he had these big long needles, and he did that again, and I did like this again, and Norbu was standing over there watching this little scenario, and he said, what's the matter, JoAnn? The monk's trying to stab me with needles down. I said, what do you mean the monk's trying to stab you with needles? He said, look, I said, not only is that a sadistic monk, he's got a bunch of needles, he's got a grin on his face as well. I said, he ain't gonna look. I see him talk to the rock, I see him grow the plants in a pot, they feed me these hot hamburgers, now he's trying to stick me with needles. I said, He said, look, they're not gonna hurt you. I said, okay, what are they gonna do, Norbu? He said, stick out your foot. I stuck out my foot. He said, all he's gonna do is stick you these needles in between the toes. And I waited a minute and I said, huh? I said, I'm going to sit there while the monk sticks me with needles in the toes, and you think that's okay? He says, they see you trot to the bathroom all the time. It's just barely under the skin. They're not going to hurt you. I said, look, Norbu, I looked at all the other stuff, and I'm going to let the monk stab me with needles. But if he hurts me, I'm going to take every one of these needles and come back and stab you with them. Okay, that's fine. So I'm looking at the grinning monk, he's looking at me, and I go home and tell my husband, he says, what are they doing over there and all that? So he goes over there and he's complaining with his back, and all the other monks have him on the table putting needles in his back. So I'm just standing there like that, grinning, and he looks at me and does like this, and I said, see, I told you. So all kind of things went on there. I saw people come and go, be healed. This man was phenomenal at what he could do, but just way, way too early for his time.
So the monastery where he was at, they entrusted Max to him, or did they outright give it to him?
No, the medicine men gave it to him. Okay. Gave it to him, and so he decided to use it on their altar as their healing and their spiritual.
That's amazing. Now, did he know, or did you find out how they had gotten it? The history of Max prior to that?
No, I didn't know to ask, because I didn't really know about crystal skulls and didn't know to ask, but just listening to the talk. Max came from Guatemala, but it's no telling where he really originated from, because these are not really Mayan, Aztec, or Native American artifacts. The Mayans might have took them and used them and reburied them, but as far as creating them, they were into the skull motifs, and they didn't really create crystal skulls. There's nothing in history about crystal skulls. This started about and just kept growing and growing and growing.
Well, for my audience, that would be the next question. What exactly are the crystal skulls?
Well, I guess the crystal skulls would be a thing to each person who owns one. But to me, I just only can tell you my opinion, because my opinions are my opinions, and they don't have to represent the opinions of the world. To me, they're tools of focus, they're tools of service, and they're tools to interact with and through. Crystal is very powerful. It has an energy field. We have an energy field. It has a frequency. We do too. We also have a low electrical charge of the brain,
Right.
and it's measurable. And if they hook you up properly to an EEG and you're touching it, especially Max, the way he's configured,
Mm-hmm.
you can see more brainwave activity. And I think what happens, it goes into the subconscious, puts you in altered states. You can start working on that alpha, the beta, the delta, and the theta states, and different memories and things will go through. But they don't even know the power of crystal. It's a power. And Max has been researched by the British Museum with a no comment because they couldn't figure out how he was created. Because crystal, when you carve into it, is somewhat brittle. And it needs to be carved out. Usually the pieces you see, like crystal balls, crystal spheres, it's all in one piece. One solid piece. When you see Max, and he doesn't show up real good on the internet because the light bounces through him and it bounces back, but he's made from 5 different growth patterns and has 2 matrices in it. Crystal does not grow like this, not here on this planet. And so each piece is made up of an overgrowth, and it's all overlaid where you can't carve into it because it's somewhat brittle, and it takes high RPM tools, which is revolutions per minute, to carve. And if you hit a little bubble, a little chip, or anything, even in a high-grade piece, you just got a lot of rock on the table. So Max has been through research, electron microscopes with cast moldings, everything, nothing. The British Museum refused to comment. You see a lot but saying nothing. And but like one of your leading geologists that works as a scientist at Boston University was looking at him. He redated the Sphinx, and he was looking at it, and he did what like pre-Columbian people do. You can see the differences in the sides. The new ones is perfect and got sharp edges where the diamond tools has gone on it and drills, and because they take it and they rough that out with a saw, and then they go in and start roughing it out with the big grinding wheels. And if they got a bubble or something there, they just got a lot of shatter on the tables. With Max, with these 5 different pieces, he has 2 matrices, and you don't have carving a matrix. Matrix is the seed that crystal grows in its infancy. That's that rough stuff around geodes. And if you try to carve into it, you can't. He's got a big white cap of a matrix up here, and the whole right side of him is matrix, with cracks and stuff in it, which is 1 piece here, 1 piece goes over into the optic. When you look down him, the pre-Columbian people will look down him, and you can see the difference between side to side, where he's hand done. So shows hand done. This whole optic over here is a whole different one. This cheekbone will stick out higher, which makes this optic deeper, and another piece of crystal goes through it and joins this other piece in the crack, so you can't go in with a high-speed Dremel tool that'll crack it open. And little differences in the depths of the teeth, where the new ones have sharpness on it, where jeweler's tools have gone on it. They did say that they saw wheel marks on Max's teeth that started back in the Mesopotamian Empire, and then they shut it down. That's back in.
So those are indications of tools that were on Earth. On
Earth, but they
at a particular
time. Although, who knows? Who knows what was where? And so that was the only thing. And but we did ghost tests on Max. We did EVP tests on Max. When you go and we ask him where he's from, he says he's from Arcturus. And Arcturus is a big, big blue star that's up toward the Milky Way, where it had nothing but loving energy on it. And because everyone picks up the love off of him, and it had contained nothing but loving energy. And they were supposed to have encoded him, handed him to the Pleiadians, and then brought him to Earth for mankind. He's very powerful, but very benevolent and very loving. I think he contains a consciousness, and he's here to serve mankind and whatever they need at that particular time. So to really date a crystal skull, you cannot date it because there's no carving. You have to go by the carving looks. But like Dr. Schock and some of the geologists, Max is the only one in the world that's made from these 5 different growth patterns in a way that cannot be reproduced. So in this one particular case, the stone speaks for itself.
Now, I know that there are ancient skulls and modern skulls. Max would be considered one of the ancient skulls.
Yeah, I only know of 2, and they have to be researched because they're being reproduced so much from Mexico and other places in China. I've seen them where people wouldn't know the difference, and they look like they're a million years old.
So you know of
Just
two
produced.
others that are
Only one,
Only
Max and
one?
one, yeah, and they were researched properly. You have to be, the proper research is in laboratories under controlled conditions by scientists that do this kind of work with electron microscopes and cast moldings. They look for tool marks. And if they see the Dremel tools, the files, the diamond, the grinding wheels, the saws, then they know they have a contemporary skull, even if it's 150 years old. The British Museum skull turned out to be a modern skull, and it's over 100 years old. They found the tool marks on it.
So the marks that were on Max weren't those kinds of marks?
No, wasn't the kind. No. And you can't do it. You can't go with a grinding wheel or saw because it's got too many cracks in it, and the way it's designed, you can't put vibration through it.
Do you feel it was made on another planet and brought here? Your personal
It
feeling?
could be from another planet. It really could be. There's many things that science doesn't have a grasp on understanding. And we're finding civilizations now that are being dug up in the Middle East and over in other places and underwater things being found that they don't even know existed. So I believe things have come from other worlds. It's come and gone. Just because we don't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. So
The other skull that you mentioned that is considered ancient, has Max been with it at any time?
yes, but Nick Nocerino was the world's foremost expert on these crystal skulls. He passed about 8 years ago in May, and he was the founder and the director of the Society of Crystal Skulls International. And that was a research educational organization that he founded in 1943 in California, and 1944 right here in the state of New York. And he held the #1 teaching certificate that was issued by the state of California to give college credits on parapsychology courses. He was the crystal skull master. He was the man who started it all. And he had a boyhood vision. And in his boyhood vision, he envisioned one master skull surrounded by 12 smaller skulls.
Right, that's the mythology. It was in the Indiana Jones movie. And it's been...
And that's where they used to come and listen to me lecture. And he envisioned one master skull surrounded by 12 smaller, and that master skull contained all the wisdom and information of the other 12. Then the legend began, and it began, and it began. But now this man was a paranormal researcher. Was this a vision of this man's future? Could this have been a vision of this man's past? Or was it simply his boyhood vision? But it's sometimes, to me, it doesn't matter. These skulls are all over the world. It's the concept. If this legend, most legends get an element of truth. There's an element of truth somewhere when they get started. It's the concept of the legend. That if this legend is true or has some basis to it, it's what they could do. It's how they've entered people's lives all over the world. These skulls are all over the world. And they become people's own personal tools of focus. They've helped people's lives in many ways. Those skulls actually do put out an energy field that can change a person's thought form.
Has that energy field been measured either through...
Max's has. Max's was done by Nick Nocerino 2 blocks away. If nothing gets in its way, it's because he's made out of all these pieces, it goes up and down, side and side, and top and bottom and around. So it's just endless if nothing gets in its way. It's extremely powerful energy field. And so I think that sets him a little bit apart. And it doesn't make him better. It doesn't make me better. I'm not a guru or shaman. I'm just a plain regular person who's sharing my story and hope it helps others. And I know that Max has helped others. So it's the concept of the legend, how these skulls have entered people's lives and what they've done in people's lives, and how these skulls have become people's tools of focus, service, and their tools to interact with. So that is the beauty of the legend, true or not. And so it started out as a legend.
Right. And my other question about when the other skull came together with Max, was there any change in the energy? Was there anything that happened?
Yes, each one actually, since crystal is very powerful and we have an energy, the skull's going to pick up and work off each person's energy differently, the way we're programmed with our genetics and our DNA. But crystal will work off of each other. So when Max worked with Sean Ra, Nick and I did, they have 2 different energies on, but they're buddies. I mean, it really forms a bond, and it brings up that energy very, very strong.
Because that's part of the mythology, is that when they're brought together, something spectacular is supposed to happen.
Yeah, so yeah, you could tell the difference in the energy fields, and he did energy fields on both of them. So he was a researcher. He didn't just go out and just say, look at my ancient skull. Said that this man was a researcher, a true researcher. He didn't just teach about crystal skulls. He taught about the healing properties. He taught in 52 countries. He taught about the healing properties of crystals. He was a teacher. But that's the man who started it all.
What do you feel the wisdom is that Max contains? Because I believe, as I know you do, that science has learned how to use crystals, and that's the foundation of our computer chips. So clearly it is certainly possible that this is an enormous storage.
It is. It's got billions of pieces of information in it.
We can know what that is or how to access
it's
it.
like someone finding a computer 10,000 years from now and you can't get in it because you don't know the password.
Exactly.
So we have to find the passwords and the way to get into it. Right now it's getting into you and working off of you. And when you see things and feel things, it's activating your energy, because crystal does three things. You touch it, it takes in your own personal energy, it expands, projects, and gives it back to you. But it can be, they've tried before to get into crystal and rocks, and they can get sounds, they haven't been able to get the images off of it. But if there's a way, like the scientist at Boston University, he said the Max contains billions of pieces. There's all kind of lines that go across them, and every one of them contains energy and information that it's seen over billions of years.
Yeah, it can be multidimensional too, because that's a science. Clearly, that would be we know how to do.
We could probably run whole cities off of quartz crystal if they really studied it.
So, what are the most profound experiences that you've had working with Max?
That's a hard question, because there's been so many. I guess I've seen people get healed. We have a picture out there. He has what we call anomaly. Max is called an anomaly, and unexplained. And he produces anomaly pictures sometimes with photographs. And I guess the spinal cord, the man who had the wreck, and that's been on Discovery Channel, and he had a wreck. And you don't see this with the naked eye, and you could take just regular photograph pictures of him with just a plain digital camera. And every now and then, we got one yesterday.
Really?
And, where energy was just shooting off the top of the back of his head. And those are called anomalies. We don't know why he does this. I mean, it's not a normal person that does this. And a spinal cord comes up, and it jags right here where the man hurt his back. And Max superimposes himself on top of himself and fleshes out, and you see vertebrae all in that spinal cord. So, and he got well. So I've seen what happens. He had a car wreck and hurt his back. And then, of course, we've did Tibetan. When we were in Hawaii, we went down to lava tubes on the Tibetan monastery, and the lava tubes to bless ancient kahuna bones. So that was very interesting. And I've been in a lava tube, walking lava slicks and stalactites.
Have you done anything with the environment in terms of purifying water?
We've put water out. We've set him in water. We've taken water and poured it, because he can. We have, in fact, Master Ho, it's in California, has did 16 years of work with Max, and you can Google him. You can go to my Facebook. You have to get to my Facebook by going Max a Crystal Skull. I have to let you in. Then I have a timeline. Then you have to go to JoAnn Parks, and you can see, if you keep going down, you can see a lot of those anomaly pictures.
So how does somebody get to your Facebook page?
You have to go.
I want everybody.
You have to go to Max the Crystal Skull, and then I have to let you in, and then you can go to JoAnn Parks, capital J-O, capital A-N-N, P-A-R-K-S, and that goes to my timeline. And so you can do both. Most of the stuff is on my timeline, and a lot of those anomaly pictures.
Do you care to give an email out? Or?
Yeah, Max and JoAnn, that's MaxandJoAnn, all little letters, no spaces, at hotmail.com. So you can reach me there.
That's wonderful.
We take Max around and allow people to, we share. And I've had Max for going on 37 years, and I've shared him for the last 27 years. This wasn't even part of my life. I didn't even know. If someone said, you're going to do this, I said, you're crazy. I do this out of many reasons, out of the memory of my daughter, because I went into a deep, dark pit when I lost my daughter. and I lost her to bone cancer, and at the age of 16, and there was really just my husband and I didn't have any family, and so I went through this deep dark pit basically alone, and it's something I wouldn't wish on anybody. And so Max is the one who brought me out of that deep dark pit. I was able to finally get him out and sit with him and I'd feel him, and I didn't know what I was feeling, and he stayed in a box in a closet for 10 years, and as I put him away when the Lama, before he died, he gave him to me and said, one of these days you'll know what he's for and what he's about, and I didn't. And
it's amazing that he chose you. Do you know why he did?
I had no idea why, because I think now that I go back, all the Lamas and everybody that came into my life, this is actually like a fairy tale.
Mm.
Everyone that came into my life that brought me on my journey are now gone. They're all gone, it's Max and I. And I had to grow and learn. I'd always been a religious person, a spiritual person. I didn't study any mainstream. I mean, I just believe that there's something greater and higher than myself. And that there's something that is of great power. And so I just allowed. And I didn't have brothers or sisters. And so I went to a deep, dark depression pit for about 5 years and got Max out when he finally got out, and went to the British Museum, went to the Houston Museum to look at him. And I finally, how he got out of the box in the closet, in 87, all the synchronicities had to come together, because in 87 I turned a TV show on Good Morning Houston, another skull looking at me, and I said, oh my gosh, and I said, that's how I found the man, through that show.
That was the one.
That was the one, and I found him. He says, I know what you have. He said, I've been looking for that skull since 1949. He knew about my skull and
really?
had been
knew the
looking
previous
for it
owner.
while I was still at home. And all this had to come together, and he owned the other ancient crystal skull, Shana Rock.
Mm-hmm.
So many synchronicities in my life came together. And, but you know, I sat with Max, and what he helped me do was what no human could do. He brought me out of that 5-year deep, long, dark pit that I was stuck in to help me express myself through him, and to tell other people that if you want to do something, if you can do something. Max is about self. Max represents self. Max is not about anyone's religion. No one prays to Max any more than we pray to the flag. It's about the respect of what that image stands for, and that stands for self. When you look into Max's eyes, you look at a reflection of your own self, of who you are and all you aspire to be. So what he's telling you, he's saying, I am you and you are me, and we are both one and the same. So he represents each person that looks into his eyes of what's everything that's inside of self, everything about self, because he's a crystal. He's talking to you.
So do you feel that that's Max's purpose on this planet, to be a
is
unifying force?
Yes, he's a unifying force to bring people together and to allow people to know that, not allow anyone to tell you that you cannot do something, not to allow people to tell, especially for children. And you know, we're all the product of the upbringing. Children are, that we are what we're taught. And so he's here to children love him, and he loves children. We've got a lot of pictures of children with him. And they seem to understand him. We had one little boy talking another language to him.
Amazing.
It's like they're completely communicating. They're in a whole different world with him. Mm-hmm. And it's to know, Max is here to let people know that family is important, and that you can lose that family, and to not let bickering and stuff to tear you apart. To come back together, because the family unit is very important, and things have taken us apart and divided that family unit, because that family can be gone in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, it can be gone.
And in a larger scale, it's the family of humanity. And if you think about Max in the cosmic sense, it's the family of the universe.
Universe, yes. And actually, you know, people think, oh no, skulls, I'm afraid of them. Not really. That was Hollywood and stuff like that, and hype. If you go Google, you can go. The human skull goes all the way back to Mary Magdalene, Jesus, and San Francis of Assisi. Mm-hmm. If you Google Mary Magdalene and the human skull, you'll see her sitting there with the human skull.
Really?
Mm-hmm. In her lap, with some on pictures. You'll see Jesus in the human skull. You see it on his drapes. You'll see him sitting with the human skull. St. Francis of Assisi, there's pictures of him with an outstretched hand with a bird. He started the Franciscan monk. And sometimes he has a human skull. I've seen him against an altar with an ancient book and an ancient human skull. Well, what did that ancient book contain? They were keepers of knowledge. The skulls were keepers of knowledge, reflection of man, and an extension of one's own self. And behind that book is a crucifixion of Christ. So they were wisdom keepers, and that's why they have the Day of the Dead in Mexico, All Souls Day. They are honoring the skulls, the genetic memory, and the bone of that ancestor who passed from one life to the next. There was no death. There was just one life to the next. And that's why they have skulls all over the altars in Mexico, and they dust them, they take care of them. They go down in the catacombs. They have them over in the little altars over in Italy, in the churches and cathedrals. They're taking care of the ancestors. So they actually do not mean death. They meant life and the continuation of life. And the continuation of family and loved ones.
So many of the world traditions really are based on that. We don't really have that so much in the West.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, and to always, Max to tell people to raise their children. They're taken away from games and all the stuff that they knew have today. There's no family life. But the main thing is to always give your children, because that's our future, and that's where we get our upbringing. We are all the product of the upbringing. And children should be given confidence in themselves. They should be told they can do anything they want to do. If they bring you something, don't push them aside and say, I'll look at it later, or go ask Susie next door to help you with your homework. Be there with them. If you teach that child love and compassion and truth and honesty and a code of ethics, they're going to grow up with that.
Absolutely.
You never tell a child, never take a child's ability away from them to do something. If they want to be, if they're little and they come to you and say, Daddy, I want to be this, I want to be that. They'll say, no, you're dumb enough, your grades aren't big enough, you can't do that, you can't do this. Don't let a person, even a grown person, take your confidence away from you and take that from you. If you want to be it, you be it, and you don't have to ask someone else and let them take your power from you. But because children, they're like a sponge. By the time they're about 3, they've taken in everything. And it's like a brainwashing. If you keep telling them over and over and over, you can't, you can't, you shouldn't, you don't, they shut down because the subconscious accepts it. And when the subconscious accepts it, they can't, because they've accepted, I can't do it. Yeah. Always tell them you can. If they want to be the garbage man, tell them, son, you're going to be the best garbage man there ever is. Because they're going to grow and they're going to change and they're going to grow and you're going to change with them until they grow, until they finally find out what they really want to do and be. Because remember, it's always been stated that the Ark was built by amateurs, but the Titanic was built by professionals.
Yeah.
That's my ending, and that story could go on and on and on. There's more to this story than you can ever listen to.
I got to tell you, this has been an amazing hour. Fabulous conversation. I've enjoyed it so much, and I'm so grateful to Jody Sirota for making this possible, introducing us. Yes. I know that we could keep going.
We could keep going. There's a whole lot more than that.
Because you've been coming now to the Meta Center for, you said, the last 9 years.
9 years since it's been open, and then I knew Jody way before that even.
And I know that she has her own interest in the skulls, and it would be wonderful to be able to talk to her about that at some point. But JoAnn, thank you so much for being a part of this. I hope that my audience has enjoyed this and learned a little bit. Please follow up. Go to JoAnn's sites. Email her. It's a fascinating subject. Yes. And I really am so glad to know that Max has a place in helping us move forward, particularly at the children's level. Because I want
to work with the children.
I believe the world can change in 2 generations.
Yes, it is. We're the product of the upbringing, and it's what we have to do to teach the children, because they learn, and if they don't learn, they shut down.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, and thank you all.
Let
anything else you'd like to say?
Well, let me know. I might be in your city, and you might get to meet Max.
That'd be amazing. Or come, make sure that you're here next year.
Yes, I'm always here the 3rd week of November.
That's incredible.
At the Meta Center, so you can always call, and you have to call early.
Yeah. Well, in closing then, may all your journeys be truthful till the next time we meet on the Bridge of Truth.
Thank you.